The first time I realized I wasn't the favorite, I didn't need words, silence carried it. My father slid a folder across the table like a judge delivering a verdict. My sister's name was spoken with that weightless certainty people reserve for promises. They will never break, and in that room I realized I was invisible. 7 days home for her, 10 years carrying my parents' expectations for me. Every nod from my mother, every approving glance at Lena. It was as if I had been training for a role I never auditioned for. I didn't argue, I didn't plead. I placed the metal keys of responsibility beside the folder, the clink slicing through the air, and everyone assumed surrender. But surrender was never the plan. I grew up in sterile hallways, the air heavy with antiseptic, lights buzzing softly overhead, trailing behind my father as he walked from room to room, greeting each resident by name. I pushed a wheelchair too tall for me, stood on tiptoe to keep it straight, and he smiled. Just a flicker, never enough. Careful, he'd say, turning back to his audience of the world. Lena didn't follow anyone. She floated, hair catching the light, laughter bending reality around her. My mother posed her in doorways, framed her in holiday photos, celebrated her as though the world itself had conspired to make her special. I was the shadow in the background, clipboard in hand, correcting the unnoticed spills, solving problems that erased my presence from their narrative. Birthdays were a declaration of this divide, hers sparkling golden balloons, a dozen relatives crowded around her joy. Mine a lean, half-frosted sheet cake, a work uniform waiting for a shift I never chose. Responsibility was mine from the start. Desire was inconvenient. I learned to want nothing, to make myself indispensable quietly, invisibly, to the system, the family, the world. By adulthood, the pattern was concrete. Lena thrived, I preserved. She built dreams in the city while I held the foundation intact, the one my parents never named, never acknowledged, but depended upon. And then the time came when their system faltered, illness, business failures, staff abandoning posts, and every hand turned, naturally, to me. I signed papers at 2 a.m, not asking, not fighting, because I had long understood the truth. I wasn't the chosen face of the family. I was the backbone they refused to see. And that's when I began writing the letter. The night I began the letter, the house was quiet, too quiet. Every creak in the floor sounded like accusation. Every hum of the refrigerator, a reminder of the invisible labor I had carried for years. I placed my tablet on the edge of the bed and stared at the blank screen, knowing that what I wrote would be more than words, it would be an awakening. I wasn't venting, I wasn't begging for recognition. I was mapping a system no one had ever named, a network of responsibilities, human dependencies, and trust that had carried the family's world on its back. I began with timelines, 10 years condensed into crises survived, mistakes corrected, emergencies mitigated, regulatory traps avoided. Every detail a testament to the invisible architecture I had built, the structure they assumed existed without me. Each keystroke felt like claiming ownership of a power they had denied me. I wrote about the medical emergencies, the contracts, the licensing protocols, the partnerships, the people who relied on me to keep the machinery moving while everyone else celebrated the face of the family. I traced their neglect with precision, but there was no accusation, only clarity. If someone were to inherit this, they had to understand the truth beneath the surface. And my sister, who had been gifted applause and attention, had never known the weight she was about to bear. I paused halfway through, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. It was time to acknowledge a deeper truth. Systems run on unseen hands, and power isn't granted by applause. It is earned in silence. I wrote that phrase twice, the words echoing in the dark. Power follows understanding. Power follows understanding. Repeat it silently if you hear this, because recognizing it shifts the axis of who you are. You are no longer a bystander in your own story. You are awake. You are accountable. The system bends to those who see it, not those who are praised for appearing in it. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, and for a moment I felt the world lean in, listening. My mind traced every slight, every overlooked effort, every birthday cake left half-frosted, every nod that meant nothing to me but meant everything to them. And I understood the cruel beauty of control. People cling to the visible, the glamorous, while the real power flows quietly in unseen channels. I was that power, and now I was documenting it, crystallizing it, preparing it to reveal itself when the moment was right. By the time I closed the tablet, the letter was not just a message, it was a reckoning. I folded it carefully, the red envelope a signal, a warning, a tool. This was not revenge, it was inevitability. The next morning, I moved through the hallways with the same calm I had cultivated for a decade, every staff member knowing, without being told, that nothing existed without me. Lena floated past with a notebook and a smile, still unaware that the world had shifted under her feet without her knowing it. And I waited, because the system, once revealed, demands its reckoning. The next morning, the air felt different, heavier, charged with the invisible threads I had been weaving for years. I moved through the house with purpose, not because anyone noticed, but because every action I took reinforced the truth they refused to see. The folders, the schedules, the contracts, all of it was mine to command, quietly, efficiently, without applause. My sister, the celebrated face of the family, still floated through the rooms as if the world had always belonged to her. And yet, beneath that practiced grace, she had no idea that every moment she thrived, every opportunity she claimed had been scaffolded by hands she never acknowledged. I watched my parents from the corner of my eye, their pride untempered by awareness. They believed Lena's presence was enough to sustain the legacy, unaware that the true continuity had been maintained by the invisible work I performed. They had invested in the visible, in the shiny surface, while I had invested in permanence, in structure, in control. And that is the cruel calculus of power. It is silent, patient, unglamorous, yet unyielding. Every decision I made, every corrective action, had built a fortress that no amount of charm, no amount of inherited favor could dismantle. By mid-afternoon, I had gathered every document, every record, every thread of institutional memory that defined what the family actually controlled. Contracts that meant nothing on their own became the spine of the system. Licensing agreements, compliance protocols, vendor relationships, partnerships, all invisible, all intangible, yet more powerful than the applause that had always accompanied my sister. This was the leverage no one had imagined I possessed. I moved with precision, the kind honed from years of operating in the background, unseen but indispensable. And then I made my move. I drafted the final section of the letter, not as accusation, not as a plea, but as revelation. I laid out every truth they had refused to acknowledge, who had kept the system alive, who had ensured continuity, who truly held the foundation beneath their illusions of control. The letter was not anger. It was inevitability. Every carefully chosen word was a lever, and when Lena read it, the world she had relied upon would fracture. I paused and looked at the envelope, feeling the weight of what I carried. This was not merely a letter. It was a signal of authority, a declaration of control, a blueprint for a reckoning. The silence around me was profound, almost sacred, as though the house itself held its breath, waiting for the moment the hidden would confront the celebrated. And in that pause, I understood a deeper truth. Power is not what others give you. Power is what you claim in the shadows, then reveal at the perfect moment. When I walked out of my room, every step carried the inevitability of revelation. The stage was set, the players unaware, the truth poised to strike. By evening, the house had returned to its familiar rhythm, but I knew it was an illusion. Every laugh, every clink of cutlery, every polite exchange was layered over a tension they could not see, the tension of control shifting silently beneath their feet. I moved through the rooms as I always had, calm, composed, observing everything, storing every glance, every assumption. They believed they were in command. They believed the stage they had built was enough to sustain the story. But power, the kind that matters, is invisible, structural, and unshakable. It does not beg for attention. It does not request applause. It waits. I returned to the office where the folders lay neatly stacked, each one a testament to years of invisible labor, each one a record of authority exercised without recognition. I reviewed them carefully, imagining the day my sister would confront them. What would she see? What would break her illusion? I had no intention of destroying her. I had no need for theatrics. The system itself would reveal her inexperience, her reliance on surface appearances, while the foundation, the work I had done, would remain intact, undeniable, unassailable. Halfway through the night, I paused and considered the gravity of what I was about to release. This wasn't simply about family favoritism. This was about awakening understanding, about teaching the world that those who do the unseen work, those who carry responsibility without recognition, hold the real power. I typed a symbolic phrase into the letter twice, a trigger for recognition, a silent pact with myself and anyone who would read it. Authority follows clarity. Authority follows clarity. Repeat it. Say it in your mind. Let it settle. This is not optional. This is the shift. I imagined my sister opening the envelope, expecting warmth, celebration, perhaps guidance. Instead, she would confront the truth she had never considered, that she had inherited appearance without substance, a title without the backbone, applause without comprehension. I imagined her confusion, her disbelief, the slight tremor, as reality pulled the rug out from under her, and I smiled quietly, because for the first time the invisible and unacknowledged would speak. As the night deepened, I placed the letter carefully in the red envelope. Alongside it, the keys, the documents, the power of attorney, all signals, all levers, all truths poised for revelation. No one suspected, no one anticipated, and that is the essence of mastery. The world applauds the visible, while the unseen architect of outcomes holds the levers. When I finally walked out of the office, the house seemed unchanged, yet everything had shifted. The air was thick with expectation I could feel, but no one else could. They were about to learn the most dangerous lesson of all. Power is claimed quietly, exercised invisibly, and revealed at the perfect moment. The morning of the legacy celebration, the house hummed with anticipation, yet the true tension lay unseen. My parents arranged tables, polished glasses, rehearsed smiles. They believed they were orchestrating a ceremony of triumph for my sister. Lena floated through the rooms, unaware that her world was about to tilt. I carried the red envelope, the keys, the POA documents with calm precision, each item a silent instrument of inevitability. They saw only normalcy. They had no idea that the balance of authority was about to shift under their own roof. When I entered the room, the air was warm, filled with polite conversations and the low murmur of congratulations. My steps were deliberate, each movement measured. No one noticed at first. They never noticed the backbone. I placed the items carefully on the table in front of my sister, keys, envelope, and documents aligned like a subtle, unspoken challenge. The metallic tap of the keys cut through the soft ambience, drawing eyes, prompting a brief, confused silence. My father's frown betrayed the first inkling that he had miscalculated. "Kara," he said softly but with uncertainty, "this isn't necessary." I didn't respond. I simply gestured toward the envelope. Lena reached for it first, her fingers brushing the edge, curiosity and confidence intertwining. She unfolded it slowly, expecting perhaps instructions, maybe a ceremonial note. The first line caught her off guard, her eyes narrowed. She read further, confusion sharpening into disbelief, her breath catching in a whisper. "What is this?" Hands trembled. Eyes widened. "No, this can't be right. You're joking." Her chair scraped the floor as she stood, voice rising, a sudden tremor of panic entering the room. My parents' expressions drained. My father reached instinctively for the pages, scanning the transfers, the foundation, the licenses, the operational control. Each paragraph revealed a truth they had refused to see, a structure they had assumed could be transferred without understanding. My mother's hand shook as she touched the documents. The applause, the celebration, the carefully curated image, it evaporated in an instant. Authority does not apologize. It does not negotiate, it is recognized, it commands. And for the first time, everyone in the room realized the reality they had ignored for years. The silence that followed was profound, almost sacred. Lena's confusion, my parents' shock, the subtle awareness of staff quietly observing, all were aligned into a tableau of inevitability. I stood calmly, letting the system speak for itself, letting the truth settle like a stone in still water. The power of preparation, of unseen labor, of invisible authority, it revealed itself without emotion, without theatrics, yet utterly undeniable. This is the point where understanding awakens, not through anger, not through accusation, but through clarity. They had always favored the visible, the praised, the applauded, yet the unseen hand, the quiet architect of reality, had been in control all along. After the shock settled, The room remained heavy with unspoken tension. Lena clutched the letter, the red envelope still warm in her hands, as if its edges carried the weight of truth itself. My parents stood frozen, the illusion of control evaporating from their posture. The celebration continued around them, soft chatter, polite laughter. But for anyone paying attention, the shift was undeniable. The backbone of the family, the invisible force they had long ignored, was now fully visible, and it had nothing to do with charm, appearances, or inherited favor. Power had quietly changed hands, and it was irreversible. I didn't speak immediately. I let the silence stretch, letting the truth settle like molten metal cooling into structure. Every glance, every quiver, every realization etched itself into the atmosphere. This is the lesson they had refused to teach themselves. Authority is not given. It is claimed through diligence, clarity, and the relentless execution of responsibility no one else wants to touch. Lena's hands trembled over the letter, her smile gone, replaced by the fragile awareness that she had inherited a role she had never earned. And my parents, my mother's nods, my father's distracted glances, were confirmation of the reality they had ignored for years. The foundation of power had always been mine. I explained nothing. I corrected nothing. I simply placed the keys and the documents in their rightful order, as if setting pieces on a chessboard. Those who understood, the staff, the advisors, the people who had quietly observed me for years, knew the depth of the strategy. This was not aggression. This was structure. Invisible hands had built an unshakable system, and now it was acknowledged. The celebration of legacy became irrelevant. The true recognition had already been claimed. By evening, the family understood the new hierarchy, even if they could not articulate it. I had shifted reality without confrontation, without spectacle, using only the instruments of unseen labor and strategic clarity. Lena, now holding the letter like a fragile relic, glimpsed the enormity of what she had overlooked. And in that moment I saw a deeper awakening, not just for her but for everyone in that room who had assumed visibility equated authority. It never does. The quiet, relentless, competent hand always shapes the outcome. As the guests departed, whispers followed, acknowledging the subtle force that had reshaped everything. I remained calm, watching the residue of revelation linger. This is the truth few dare to accept. Power lies in preparation, understanding, and the courage to execute what others ignore. Recognition may be delayed, applause may never come, but the system bends to those who see it clearly, who claim it deliberately, and who act with precision in the shadows. And for the first time, the world could no longer ignore the invisible architect. The night ended, but the house no longer belonged to the illusions my parents had built. I moved through the halls as if I had always owned them, every step resonating with authority no applause could grant. Lena lingered, her eyes still wide from the revelation, the letter clutched in her hand like a map to a world she hadn't navigated. My parents followed, hesitant, unsure, their faces betraying the quiet awe of realization. The backbone, the unseen architect, the one they never acknowledged, had orchestrated the future while they celebrated appearances. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. Power does not shout. Power observes. It waits. It strikes at the perfect moment, and then it stands unshakable, undeniable, eternal. The system I had built, the foundation, the licenses, the operational clarity, the human network remained intact. It no longer required their recognition. It had its own permanence, independent of the praise they had once given to the visible. I watched Lena slowly fold the letter, her hands shaking, and I understood she had glimpsed the truth that many never see. The world does not bend to charm, to favoritism, or to stage presence. The world bends to competence, to clarity, to the silent mastery of those who claim authority quietly. I stepped outside, the night air crisp, almost approving, and realized that this story, the one that had been quietly unfolding for a decade, was no longer mine alone. It belonged to anyone who had ever labored in the shadows, who had been invisible while the world celebrated others, who had learned to want nothing yet carried everything. The red envelope, the keys, the documents, they were symbols, yes, but also tools of awakening. Anyone who recognizes the weight of unseen authority knows, once you claim it, there is no turning back. And now I leave you with this, not as a story, not as a caution, but as a challenge. The world applauds those who appear, but only those who act, who build, who understand the machinery behind the curtain will ever control it. Authority is not given. It is earned in silence, wielded with precision, and revealed at the exact moment it cannot be denied. So remember this: long after the applause fades, long after the celebration ends, the backbone shapes the future. The invisible architect decides outcomes. The system bows only to those who claim it. And once you understand this truth, once you internalize it, you are no longer a participant in life's performance. You are the force behind it. The letter has been read. The keys have been handed. The world is watching, and now so are you. The room has gone silent. The applause has faded, but the weight of what just happened hangs in the air. My sister's hands still tremble over the letter, my parents frozen with disbelief, and yet nothing I did was loud, nothing I did was dramatic. The change, the shift in authority, the recognition of unseen power happened quietly, inevitably, like gravity itself asserting its will. This is the lesson. If you are brave enough to accept, the world honors the visible, applauds the glamorous, celebrates the face of things, but real power belongs to those who work in the shadows, who carry responsibility silently, who claim authority with clarity and precision. The envelope, the keys, the documents, they were more than objects. They were symbols of awakening, of a shift that could not be undone. I didn't destroy, I didn't punish, I revealed. I clarified, I allowed the truth to speak for itself. And when truth is revealed, illusions crumble. Appearances are meaningless. Titles and praise are hollow if not backed by structure, by preparation, by competence. The world bends not to those who are seen, but to those who understand, who act, who execute with unseen mastery. For anyone watching this now, take note: life will always celebrate the obvious. But mastery, influence, and true authority come quietly, patiently, and with purpose. You don't need approval. You don't need applause. You need clarity, preparation, and the courage to act when the time is right. This story isn't just about a family. It's about every system, every organization, every hierarchy that exists in the world. And it's about the choice. Will you be the visible figure admired and unnoticed, or the invisible force that actually shapes the outcome? The letter has been read. The keys have been handed. The system now follows those who understand it. And as you leave this story, remember, power is earned, authority is claimed, and the unseen hand always holds the real control. The world has its favorites. The world has its illusions. But the truth belongs to those who see it and those who act upon it. You have seen it now. You know it. The choice is yours.